Mitchell David Mitch Albom is an American author, journalist, screenwriter, dramatist, radio and television broadcaster, and musician. His books have sold over 35 million copies worldwide, having achieved national recognition for sports writing in the earlier part of his career. He is perhaps best known for the inspirational stories and themes that weave through his books, plays, and films. Early life. Mitch Albom was born May 23, 1958, in Passaic, New Jersey. Albom lived in Buffalo, New York for a little while until his family settled in Oakland, New Jersey, which is close to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He grew up in a small, middle-class neighborhood from which most people never left. Mitch was once quoted as saying that his parents were very supportive, and always used to say, "Don't expect your life to finish here. There's a big world out there. Go out and see it." Quote. His older sister, younger brother, and he himself all took that message to heart and traveled extensively. His siblings are currently settled in Europe. Albom once mentioned that now his parents say, "Great, all our kids went and saw the world and now no one comes home to have dinner on Sundays." Columnist. While living in New York, Albom developed an interest in journalism. Still supporting himself by working nights in the music industry, he began to write during the day for the Queens Tribune, a weekly newspaper in Flushing, New York. His work there helped turn him entry into the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. During his time there, to help pay his tuition, he took work as a babysitter. In addition to nighttime piano playing, Albom took a part-time job with Sport magazine. Upon graduation, he freelanced in that field for publications such as Sports Illustrated, Geo, and the Philadelphia Inquirer, and covered several Olympic sports events in Europe, including track and field and luge, paying his own way for travel, and selling articles once he was there. In 1983, he was hired as a full-time feature writer for the Fort Lauderdale News and Sun-Sentinel, and eventually promoted to columnist. In 1985, having won that year's Associated Press Sports Editors Award for Best Sports News Story, Albom was hired as lead sports columnist for the Detroit Free Press to replace Mike Downey, a popular columnist who had taken a job with the Los Angeles Times. Albom's sports column became quickly popular. In 1989, when the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News merged weekend publications, Albom was asked to add a weekly non-sports column to his duties. That column ran on Sundays in the comment section and dealt with American life and values. It was eventually syndicated across the country. Both columns continue today in the Detroit Free Press. During his years in Detroit, he became one of the most award-winning sports writers of his era. He was named Best Sports Columnist in the Nation a record 13 times by the Associated Press Sports Editors and won Best Feature Writing honors from that same organization a record 7 times. No other writer has received the award more than once. He has won more than 200 other writing honors from organizations including the National Headliner Awards, the American Society of Newspaper Editors, the National Sportscasters and Sports Writers Association, and National Association of Black Journalists. On June 25, 2010, Albom was awarded the APSE's Red Smith Award for Lifetime Achievement, presented at the annual APS convention in Salt Lake City, Utah. The selection was heavily criticized by a number of Albom's peers, including fellow Red Smith Award winner Dave Kindred. Many of his columns have been collected into anthology books including Live Albom 1, Live Albom 2, Live Albom 3, and Live Albom IV. Albom also serves as a contributing editor to Parade magazine. fabrication scandal. In 2005, Albom and 4 editors were briefly suspended from the Detroit Free Press after Albom filed a column that stated that 2 college basketball players were in the crowd at an NCAA tournament game when in fact they were not. In a column printed in the April 3, 2005 edition, Albom described 2 former Michigan State basketball players, both now in the NBA, attending an NCAA Final Four semi-final game on Saturday to cheer for their school. The players had told Albom they planned to attend, so Albom, filing on his normal Friday deadline but knowing the column could not come out until Sunday, wrote the players were there, but the players' plans changed at the last minute and they did not attend the game. The Detroit Free Press also suspended the 4 editors who had read the column and allowed it to go to print. Albom was in attendance at the game, but the columnist failed to check on the 2 players' presence. A later internal investigation found no other similar instances in Albom's past columns, but did cite an editorial-wide problem of routinely using unattributed quotes from other sources. Carol Lee Hutton, publisher of the Detroit Free Press at the time of the scandal, later told BuzzFeed that she regretted the way it was handled. It was a stupid mistake that Mitch made that others failed to catch, but not at all indicative of some problem that required the response we gave it. I allowed myself to believe that we were doing this highly credible, highly transparent thing, when really in hindsight what I think we were doing was acquiescing to people who were taking advantage of a stupid mistake. Author. Sports books. Albom's first non-anthology book was Bo, Life, Laughs, and the Lessons of a College Football Legend, an autobiography of football coach Bo Schembechler, co-written with the coach. The book was published in August 1989 and became Albom's first New York Times bestseller. Albom's next book was Fab Five, Basketball, Trash Talk, The American Dream. A look into the starters on the University of Michigan men's basketball team that reached the NCAA championship game as freshmen in 1992 and again as sophomores in 1993. The book was published in November 1993 and also became a New York Times bestseller. Tuesdays with Morrie. Albom's breakthrough book came about after a friend of his viewed Morrie Schwartz's interview with Ted Koppel on ABC News Nightline in 1995, in which Schwartz, a sociology professor, spoke about living and dying with a terminal disease. Albom, who had been close with Schwartz during his college years at Brandeis, felt guilty about not keeping in touch, so he reconnected with his former professor, visiting him in suburban Boston and eventually coming every Tuesday for discussions about life and death. Albom, seeking a way to pay for Schwartz's medical bills, sought out a publisher for a book about the visits. Although rejected by numerous publishing houses, Doubleday accepted the idea shortly before Schwartz's death, and Albom was able to fulfill his wish to pay Schwartz's bills. The book, Tuesdays with Morrie, was published in 1997, a small volume that chronicled Albom's time spent with his professor. The initial printing was 20,000 copies. As word of mouth grew, the book sales slowly increased and landed the book a brief appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show, nudging the book onto the New York Times bestsellers list in October 1997. It steadily climbed, reaching the #1 position 6 months later. It remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 205 weeks. One of the top-selling memoirs of all time, Tuesdays with Morrie has sold over 14 million copies and has been translated into 45 languages. Oprah Winfrey produced a television movie adaptation by the same name for ABC, starring Hank Azaria as Albom and Jack Lemmon as Morrie. It was the most-watched TV movie of 1999 and won 4 Emmy Awards. Albom and playwright playwright Jeffrey Hatcher later co-authored a two-man theater play that opened off-Broadway in the fall of 2001, starring Alvin Einstein as Maury and John Tenney as Albom. Tuesdays with Maury is regularly taught in high schools and universities around the world, and is also taught in some primary schools in Asia. Due to its very simple writing, Albom started a private foundation with some of the proceeds, the Tuesdays with Mitch Foundation, to fund various charitable efforts. The 5 people you meet in heaven. After the success of Tuesdays with Maury, Albom's next foray was in fiction. His follow-up book was The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, published in September 2003. Although released 6 years after Tuesdays with Maury, the book was a fast success and again launched Albom onto the New York Times bestseller list. The 5 People You Meet in Heaven sold over 10 million copies in 38 territories and in 35 languages. In 2004, it became a television movie for ABC, starring Jon Voight, Ellen Burstyn, Michael Imperioli, and Jeff Daniels. Directed by Lloyd Kramer, the film was critically acclaimed and the most watched TV movie of the year, with 18.7 million viewers. The 5 People You Meet in Heaven is the story of Eddie, a wounded war veteran who lives what he believes is an uninspired and lonely life fixing rides at a seaside amusement park. On his 83rd birthday, Eddie is killed while trying to save a little girl from a falling bride. He awakes in the afterlife, where he learns that heaven is not a location but a place in which your life is explained to you by 5 people who were in, who affected, or were affected by your life. Albom has said the book was inspired by his real-life uncle, Eddie Beichman, who, like the character, served during World War II in the Philippines, and died when he was 83. Eddie told Albom as a child about a time he was rushed to surgery and had a near-death experience, his soul floating above the bed. There, Eddie said, he saw all his dead relatives waiting for him at the edge of the bed. Albom has said that image of people waiting when you die inspired his concept of the 5 people you meet in heaven. For One More Day, Albom's second novel, For One More Day, was published in 2006. The hardcover edition spent 9 months on the New York Times bestseller list after debuting at the top spot. It also reached #1 on USA Today and publishes weekly bestseller lists. It was the first book to be sold by Starbucks in the launch of the Book Break program in the fall of 2006. It has been translated into 26 languages. On December 9, 2007, the ABC aired the 2-hour television event Motion Picture Oprah Winfrey Presents Mitch Albom's For One More Day, which starred Michael Imperioli and Ellen Burstyn. Burstyn received a Screen Actors Guild Award nomination for her role as Posey Benito. For One More Day is about a son who gets to spend a day with his mother who died 8 years earlier. Charlie Chick Benito is a retired baseball player who, facing the pain of unrealized dreams, alcoholism, divorce, and an estrangement from his grown daughter, returns to his childhood home and attempts suicide. There he meets his long-dead mother, who welcomes him as if nothing ever happened. The book explores the question, what would you do if you had one more day with someone you've lost? Albom has said his relationship with his own mother was largely behind the story of the book, and that several incidents in For One More Day are actual events from his childhood. Have a Little Faith, Have a Little Faith, Albom's first non-fiction book since Tuesdays with Maury, was released on September 29, 2009, through Hyperion Publishing, and recounts Albom's experiences that led to him writing the eulogy for Albert L. Lewis, a rabbi from his hometown in New Jersey. The book is written in the same vein as Tuesdays with Morrie, in which the main character, Mitch, goes through several heartfelt conversations with the rabbi in order to better know and understand the man that he would one day eulogize. Through this experience, Albom writes, his own sense of faith was reawakened, leading him to make contact with Henry Covington, the African-American pastor of the I Am My Brother's Keeper Church, in Detroit, where Albom was then living. Covington, a past drug addict, dealer, and ex-convict, ministered to a congregation of largely homeless men and women in a church so that the roof leaked when it rained. From his relationships with these two very different men of faith, Albom writes about the difference faith can make in the world. On November 27, 2011, ABC aired the Hallmark Hall of Fame television movie based on the book, The Timekeeper. This work focuses on the inventor of the world's first clock, who is punished for trying to measure God's greatest gift. He is banished to a cave for centuries and forced to listen to the voices of all who came after him, seeking more days and years. Eventually, with his soul nearly broken, Father Time is granted his freedom, along with a magical eyeglass and a mission, a chance to redeem himself by teaching two earthly people the true meaning of time. He returns to our world, now dominated by the hour, and commences a journey with two unlikely partners, a teenage girl who is about to give up on life and a wealthy old businessman who wants to live forever. To save himself, he must save them both. Radio host Albom began on radio in 1987 on WLLZ Detroit, a now-defunct active rock radio station. He worked on the station's morning program as a sports commentator, and started a Sunday night sports talk program, the Sunday Sports Albom, in 1988, believed to be one of the first sports talk shows to ever air on FM radio. In 1996, he moved to WJR, a powerful, clear-channel station in Detroit, where he broadcasts a 5-day-a-week general talk show with an emphasis on entertainment, writing, current events and culture. He has been honored by the Michigan Association of Broadcasters as the top afternoon talk show host, and was voted best talk show host in Detroit by Our Detroit magazine. In 2001, the show was televised nationally in a simulcast by MSNBC. Albom continues to do the show from 5 to 7 p.m. ET. Following his Monday show, he hosts an hour-long sports talk show called The Monday Sports Albom. Television. Albom appears regularly on ESPN's The Sports Reporters and Sports Center. He has also made appearances on Costas Now, The Oprah Winfrey Show, The Today Show, CBS's The Early Show, ABC's Good Morning America, Drive, Phil, Larry King Live, The View, The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, and most recently appeared as a guest voice on The Simpsons on the episode Thursdays with Abby. Playwright. On November 19, 2002, the stage version of Tuesdays with Morrie opened off-Broadway at the Minetta Lane Theatre, co-authored by Mitch Albom and Jeffrey Hatcher and directed by David S. Bjornson. Tuesdays with Morrie starred Alvin Epstein as Morrie and John Tenney as Mitch. His follow-up to the stage adaptation of Tuesdays were two original comedies that premiered at the Purple Rose Theatre Company in Chelsea, Michigan, a theater started by actor Jeff Daniels. Duck Hunter Shoots Angel and The Winners have both been produced nationwide, with the latter having its West Coast premiere at the Laguna Playhouse in Laguna Beach, California. The premiere of Albom's Ernie, a play dedicated to the memory of famed Detroit Tigers broadcaster Ernie Harwell, occurred in April 2011 at the City Theatre in Detroit. Musician. Albom is an accomplished songwriter and lyricist. In 1992, he wrote the song "Cookin' for Two" for a television movie, Christmas in Connecticut, directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger. The song was nominated for the Cabliche Award. Albom has been featured on the cover of Making Music magazine. He also wrote the song Hit Somebody, which was recorded by singer-songwriter Warren Zevon, with David Letterman on backup vocals. The song was released as a single in Canada and will be adapted into a film by director Kevin Smith. He currently performs with the Rock Bottom Remainders, a band of writers that also features Dave Barry, Stephen King, Ridley Pearson, Amy Tan, Kathy Carmen Goldmark, Sam Barry, and Scott Turow. The performances raise funds for various children's literacy projects across the country. In July 2013, Albom co-authored Hard Listening with the rest of the Rock Bottom Remainders. The e-book combines essays, fiction, musings, candid email exchanges, and conversations, comprising photographs, audio, and video clips, and interactive quizzes that give readers a view into the private lives of the authors. Albom is also featured in Making Music magazine. Charity work. The Dream Fund, established in 1989, provides a scholarship for disadvantaged children to study the arts. A Time to Help, started in 1998, is a Detroit volunteer group. SAY Detroit is an umbrella program that funds shelters and cares for the homeless. Quote, "It is now a 5,013 non-profit organization that funds numerous homeless shelters throughout the Metro Detroit area. His most recent effort, A Hole in the Roof Foundation, helps faith groups of different denominations who care for the homeless repair the spaces they use. The first project was the I Am My Brother's Keeper roof in the crumbling but vibrant Detroit church, completed in December 2009. The second project, completed in April 2010, was the rebuilding of the Caring and Sharing Mission, an orphanage in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Albom also directs the Have Faith Haiti Mission, a project whose stated objective is dedicated to the safety, education, health and spiritual development of Haiti's impoverished children and orphans, incorporating language lessons and Christian prayer. During a Detroit Free Press strike in 1995, Albom crossed the picket line and returned to work. In 1999, Albom was named National Hospice Organization's Man of the Year. In 2000, at the Emmy Awards, Albom was personally thanked by actor Jack Lemmon during his acceptance speech for his Emmy for Best Actor in a TV Movie, a mini-series for Tuesdays with Morrie. It would be Lemmon's last major acting role. In February 2003, Albom was called to testify at Chris Webber's perjury trial. Webber had been a member of the University of Michigan's basketball teams of the early 1990s. He was a member of the Fab Five Players, the subject of a book by Albom. Webber and three other Wolverines who played in the 1990s were alleged to have received over $290,000 in improper loans from a man considered to be a booster of the University of Michigan. Although amounts were never verified, the four other Fab Five members were not implicated and the school was cleared of any direct involvement or knowledge of the loans, which were made to players and their families. On November 22, 2005, Albom was the sole and final guest on Ted Koppel's farewell appearance on ABC's Nightline. Koppel had gotten to know Albom through his broadcasts with Morrie Schwartz, and the final program dealt with the legacy of those shows and Albom's book. On October 22, 2007, Albom appeared with former New York Governor Mario Cuomo and Tony Bennett in an evening with Tony Bennett to honor the release of Bennett's Tony Bennett in the Studio, A Life of Art and Music, for which Albom read the foreword. Selected books. Tuesdays with Morrie, ISBN 0-7679-0592-X. The Five People You Meet in Heaven, ISBN 0-7868-68716. For One More Day, ISBN 1-4013-03277. Have a Little Faith, A True Story. ISBN 0-7866868724. The Timekeeper. ISBN 14013222786. The First Phone Call from Heaven. ISBN 9780062294371. The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto.